I am sitting in my corner office on the 12th floor, looking down at the city lights below. My phone buzzes on the desk. The screen shows one word, Mom. I already know exactly what this call is about before I even pick it up. This is the third time she has called this month, and every conversation circles back to the same request. Why would a son hesitate to answer his own mother? The answer goes back 12 years. Before we get into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If family struggles and overcoming tough situations resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have ever felt like the invisible child in your own family, this story might hit close to home. Let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, and Friday night football is practically a religion. My father worked as an electrician, putting in long hours to keep food on the table. My mother was a part-time nurse at the local clinic. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house with a big oak tree in the backyard. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. I have an older brother named Marcus. He is 4 years older than me, and growing up, he was everything I was not. Marcus was tall, athletic, and naturally charming. Teachers loved him. Coaches praised him. Girls noticed him. He played varsity football, and my father never missed a single game. Every Friday night, my dad would be in those bleachers cheering louder than anyone else when Marcus scored a touchdown. Me, I was the quiet kid who preferred books over balls. I excelled in math and science, spent my afternoons in the school library, and joined the science club instead of the football team. When I competed in regional science fairs, my parents rarely showed up. There was always something else going on. Marcus had practice. Marcus had a game. Marcus needed a ride somewhere. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself that Marcus was the firstborn, so naturally he got more attention. That is just how families work, right? But the differences were hard to ignore. Marcus had the bigger bedroom with the window facing the backyard. When he turned 16, my parents bought him a used pickup truck within a week of him asking. When I asked for money to buy a computer so I could learn programming, I had to wait 3 months. And even then, I got a second-hand machine that barely ran. Still, I held on to one promise that kept me going. From the time I was born, my parents had been putting money into a college savings account for me. Every month, a small amount went in. They told me the same thing they told Marcus: you will go to college properly. That is your future. By the time I was 17 years old, that account had grown to about $42,000. It was not a fortune, but combined with the partial scholarship I was hoping to earn, it would be enough to get me through a good engineering school. I worked hard in high school. My grades were excellent. I scored well on my standardized tests. When acceptance letters started arriving in the spring of my senior year, I got into 3 solid schools. One of them was my dream university, a well-respected engineering program about 5 hours from home. I remember holding that acceptance letter in my hands, feeling like all those years of being overlooked were finally worth it. This was my ticket out. This was my future. Then summer arrived, and everything changed. Marcus was 21 at the time. He had dropped out of college after his sophomore year, claiming that classroom learning was not for him. He drifted between odd jobs, never sticking with anything for more than a few months. Landscaping, retail, a brief stint at a warehouse. Nothing held his interest. One evening, Marcus came home with a thick folder full of papers and a gleam in his eye that I had not seen before. He gathered the whole family in the living room and announced that he had finally found his calling. He wanted to open an auto repair shop. He had done research, he said. He had found a location. He had a business plan. My parents listened with wide eyes as Marcus laid out his vision. He talked about profit margins and customer bases and expansion possibilities. He made it sound like a guaranteed success. My father nodded along, looking prouder than I had seen him in years. My mother smiled and squeezed Marcus's hand. I sat in the corner, a knot forming in my stomach. Something felt off, but I could not pinpoint what. A few nights later, my parents called me into the living room. The atmosphere was heavy. My father sat in his armchair, hands clasped together. My mother perched on the edge of the couch, not quite meeting my eyes. "Son," my father began, "we need to discuss something important as a family." My mother jumped in. "Marcus needs capital to start his business. About $60,000 total. We have already committed his college savings, which was around $20,000. But that is not enough." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. I knew what was coming before she said it. "We need to borrow from your college fund," she continued. "Just temporarily. Once the shop is successful, Marcus will pay you back double, maybe even triple." I looked at Marcus, who was leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He had this relaxed expression on his face, like this was already a done deal, and we were just going through the formalities. "But I already got accepted," I managed to say. My voice sounded small even to my own ears. "I am supposed to start in the fall." My father cut me off. "You are smart, Blake. You will figure it out. You can go to community college for the first 2 years and then transfer. Plenty of people do that. Marcus needs this opportunity now." My mother reached over and patted my knee. "Family helps family," she said softly. "You understand, do you not?" I looked around the room at their faces. My father's jaw was set with that stubborn determination I knew so well. My mother's eyes pleaded with me to just go along with it, and Marcus stood there saying nothing, already counting his victory. I realized in that moment that I was not being asked. I was being told. The money had my name on it, but I had never truly had a say. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like my entire world had crumbled. The acceptance letter from my dream school sat on my desk, now just a piece of paper with no power behind it. I kept asking myself the same question over and over: why is his dream more important than my future? The fall arrived, and instead of moving into a dormitory at my dream university, I enrolled at the local community college. I registered for classes during the day and found a job working the evening shift at a warehouse store, unloading trucks and stocking shelves. 30 hours a week on top of a full course load. My body ached constantly, but I pushed through. Meanwhile, Marcus had his grand opening. My parents drove an hour to be there for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. They took photos, posted them on social media, and bragged to relatives about their son, the entrepreneur. The shop looked impressive from the outside. New equipment, a freshly painted sign, 2 employees in matching uniforms. Every time I came home for a weekend dinner, conversation revolved around Marcus and his business. How many cars he serviced that week. What new equipment he was thinking about buying. The big clients he was trying to land. My parents hung on every word. Nobody asked about my classes. Nobody wondered how I was managing to work and study at the same time. I was invisible again, just like I had always been. About a year into the business, cracks began to show. Marcus had never been good with money. He spent lavishly on things the shop did not need. Fancy waiting room furniture, top-of-the-line tools that gathered dust. He hired a 3rd employee before the customer base could support it. When business slowed down, he blamed the economy. When customers complained about shoddy work, he blamed his staff. One Sunday afternoon, I overheard my mother on the phone with Marcus. Her voice was tight with worry. She kept saying things like, "How much more do you need, and we will figure something out." After she hung up, I approached her carefully. "Is everything okay with the shop?" She forced a smile. "Just growing pains. Every business goes through them." A few weeks later, I learned that my parents had dipped into their retirement savings to give Marcus another $20,000. They did not ask me this time. They knew I had nothing left to give. I tried once to voice my concerns. "Maybe Marcus is not cut out for running a business," I said as gently as I could. My mother's face hardened instantly. "Why do you always have to tear your brother down? Can you not just support him for once?" I stopped trying after that. At community college, I kept my head down and worked harder than ever. I finished my 2 years with a near-perfect grade point average and transferred to the state university. It was not my dream school, but it was a legitimate 4-year institution with a decent computer science program. The only problem was that I had to take out student loans to afford it. $40,000 of debt that would follow me for years. At the state university, I worked 3 part-time jobs: tutoring, food service, night shifts at a convenience store. There were semesters when I slept 4 hours a night and survived on cheap ramen and free coffee from the student center. My classmates talked about their parents visiting on weekends, bringing care packages full of home-cooked food. My parents never came. On my 20th birthday, I sat alone in my cramped dorm room eating instant noodles. I called home to say hello. My mother answered but sounded distracted. "Sorry, honey," she said, "we are at the shop helping Marcus with inventory. Happy birthday. I have to go." She hung up before I could respond. 2.5 years after its grand opening, Marcus's auto repair shop closed its doors for good. He owed money to the landlord, to suppliers, to the bank. The total losses were staggering. My entire $42,000 college fund. The additional $20,000 from my parents' retirement savings. Plus another $15,000 in business debts that my parents ended up covering to protect Marcus from collections. When I heard the news, I felt a strange mix of vindication and despair. I had known this would happen. Some part of me had seen it coming from the very beginning. But being right brought no satisfaction. Marcus moved back in with my parents. He was 25 years old, unemployed, and showed no signs of taking responsibility for anything. When relatives asked what happened, he had 1,000 excuses ready. The location was bad. The economy tanked. His employees stole from him. His competitors played dirty. Never once did he admit that maybe he had made mistakes. I came home for winter break that year hoping for some kind of acknowledgement, an apology, a thank you for sacrificing my dreams, something. Instead, my mother greeted me with a tired smile and said, "Please do not bring up the shop. Your brother is going through a hard time." Later that evening, I found myself alone with my father in the garage. I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me for years. "What about my college fund?" I asked quietly. "Is Marcus going to pay me back?" My father looked at me like I had asked something outrageous. "The money is gone, Blake. There is no point dwelling on it. Your brother tried his best. That is what matters. But I had to take out loans," I pressed. "I am going to be paying this off for years." He shrugged. "You are young. You will manage. Besides, we all have to make sacrifices for family." I left that conversation understanding something clearly for the first time. My parents were never going to see what they had done. In their eyes, Marcus was the one who needed protection. I was just expected to figure things out on my own. So that is exactly what I did. I threw myself into my studies with renewed determination. I graduated with a degree in computer science and a mountain of debt. On graduation day, my parents did not attend. Marcus was apparently having a rough week and they needed to stay home to support him emotionally. I walked across that stage alone, accepted my diploma, and made myself a promise. I would never again wait for anyone to give me what I needed. I would build my own life brick by brick with my own two hands. After graduation, I packed everything I owned into the back of a used car I had bought with my savings and drove to Austin, Texas. I had landed an entry-level position at a technology company, and my starting salary was $65,000 a year. It was not glamorous, but it was mine. Those first few years were a grind. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, cooked all my meals at home, and drove that same beat-up car until it had over 200,000 miles on it. Every extra dollar went toward my student loans. I was obsessed with becoming debt-free. At work, I arrived early and stayed late. I volunteered for projects that nobody else wanted. I learned new programming languages on weekends. I asked for feedback constantly and implemented every suggestion. Within 2 years, I earned my first promotion and a raise that brought my salary to $90,000. Meanwhile, back in Ohio, nothing had changed. Marcus was 30 years old and still living with my parents. He bounced between temporary jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. Every so often, he would announce a new business idea: a food truck, a landscaping company, an online store. None of them ever materialized beyond the talking stage. My parents continued to support him. They paid for his car insurance. They bought his groceries. They gave him spending money. And they never seemed to question whether this was enabling him or helping him. 4 years after graduation, I paid off the last of my student loans. I remember making that final payment online and just staring at the screen for a long time. Zero balance. I had done it. $40,000 gone. And I had done it entirely on my own. That same year, I got recruited by a larger tech company. The offer was substantial: $120,000 base salary, plus stock options and bonuses. I bought my first real apartment. I traded in my old car for something reliable and new. For the first time in my life, I felt financially secure. Around this time, my family started paying attention to me again. My mother began calling more frequently. She would ask about my job, my apartment, my life in Texas. Her tone had shifted from dismissive to something almost admiring. "My brother is doing so well for himself," I once heard her tell a relative on the phone. "He works for a big tech company, you know." Marcus reached out too, though his interest felt less genuine. He would text me occasionally, calling me his successful little brother and making jokes about needing a loan. I laughed it off at first, thinking he was kidding. He was not kidding. The first real ask came about 5 years after I had moved to Austin. Marcus called one evening with his voice full of excitement. He had found a new opportunity: online retail, drop shipping. He just needed $10,000 to get started. I listened patiently and then declined. "You should save up from your current job first," I suggested. "Build some capital on your own." His tone changed instantly. "Seriously, you cannot spare 10 grand for your own brother. You are making what, 6 figures now? Do not be so selfish." I held my ground. We hung up without resolving anything. A few days later, my mother called to tell me how disappointed she was in me. "Family is supposed to help family," she said. "Have you forgotten everything we taught you?" I had not forgotten. I just remembered a different lesson than the one she thought she had taught. The requests kept coming. A few months later, my parents called about their car breaking down. They needed $5,000 for repairs. I asked for specifics and offered to help them find a cheaper mechanic. They insisted they needed the cash directly. Against my better judgment, I sent $2,000. Later, I discovered that the money had gone to Marcus for one of his schemes. After that, I became more careful. Every few months, there would be a new emergency. Medical bills, home repairs, unexpected expenses. I learned to ask detailed questions and verify before sending anything. More often than not, the money trails led back to my brother. I started saying no more than I said yes, and with every refusal, my reputation in the family sank lower. 2 years ago, my parents invited me home for Thanksgiving. It had been a while since I had visited, and I thought maybe enough time had passed for things to be different. I booked a flight, rented a car, and drove up to that familiar 3-bedroom house with the oak tree in the backyard. The first evening went smoothly enough. We ate dinner, watched football, and made small talk. I started to relax, thinking perhaps I had been too harsh in my judgments. Then, after dessert, my father cleared his throat and asked everyone to stay seated. He had that serious look on his face that I remembered from 12 years ago. "Blake," he said, "we need to discuss something as a family." My stomach dropped. My mother took over. "Marcus has a wonderful new opportunity. A restaurant. He has found the perfect location, and the business plan is solid this time. He just needs $50,000 to get started." I looked at Marcus, who was sitting across from me with an expectant expression. He actually smiled like he was confident I would say yes. "You are doing so well now," my mother continued. "This would mean so much to all of us. Family investing in family." Something inside me finally snapped, not in an explosive way, but in a calm, clarifying way. 12 years of suppressed frustration crystallized into words. I took a slow breath before speaking. 12 years ago, you took $42,000 from me without asking. That was my college fund, my future. You gave it to Marcus for a business that failed within 3 years. I looked at each of them in turn. I had to go to community college. I worked 3 jobs while getting my degree. I graduated with $40,000 in debt that took me years to pay off. On my graduation day, nobody from this family was there. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. My mother opened her mouth to interrupt, but I kept going. "Marcus lost everything you gave him. He never apologized to me. He never offered to pay me back. And neither did you. Instead, you told me to get over it because family is family." My father's face was turning red, but I did not stop. I built my career from nothing. Every dollar I have, I earned myself. Nobody handed me anything. Nobody sacrificed their future for my dreams. And now that I have finally made something of my life, you want me to hand it over so Marcus can try again. I stood up from the table. I love this family, but I am not a bank account. If you ever have a genuine medical emergency or a real crisis, I will be here. But funding another business venture that has no realistic chance of success, the answer is no. And I will not apologize for protecting what I have worked so hard to build. The room was silent. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father looked like he wanted to yell, but could not find the words. Marcus stared at his plate, unable to meet my gaze. I grabbed my coat and walked out the door. I drove back to my hotel that night instead of staying in my childhood bedroom. And strangely, I felt lighter than I had in years. In the weeks that followed, my family went quiet. My mother eventually texted that I had hurt everyone deeply. My father sent a short message saying he was disappointed in the man I had become. Marcus did not reach out at all, but I did not waver. I had finally said what needed to be said. The months after that Thanksgiving were difficult. Even though I knew I had done the right thing, guilt gnawed at me. Late at night, I would wonder if I had been too harsh. Maybe there had been a gentler way to say it. Maybe I should have just sent the money to keep the peace. I started seeing a therapist. It was the best decision I could have made. She helped me understand that setting boundaries is not the same as being cruel. That loving someone does not mean sacrificing your own well-being for their benefit. That I was not responsible for fixing the consequences of other people's choices. Slowly, the guilt began to fade. In its place grew something stronger. Self-respect. I threw myself into building a life that felt meaningful. At work, I got promoted to engineering manager. My income crossed $150,000 a year. I bought a nicer apartment, started investing seriously, and began mentoring young people from difficult backgrounds. Helping them navigate the challenges I had faced gave me a sense of purpose I had never expected. Outside of work, I built real friendships. People who showed up for me the way I showed up for them. I met a woman named Sophie who understood my past without judging it. She came from her own complicated family and knew what it meant to create boundaries. With her, I felt seen in a way I never had before. My relationship with my parents settled into something cautious but functional. I call my mother every few weeks. We talk about safe topics, the weather, her garden, local news. She has stopped asking for money mostly. When she does hint at it, I change the subject firmly but kindly. My father remains distant. We exchange brief words on holidays. I have accepted that we may never have the relationship I once wished for. That acceptance hurt at first, but now it feels like freedom. As for Marcus, he is 40 years old now, still living with my parents, still working odd jobs, still talking about the big opportunity that is just around the corner. I do not hate him. I genuinely hope he finds his way someday. But his journey is his own, and it is not my job to fund it. A few months ago, something small but significant happened. My mother called, and for the first time in years, she did not ask for anything. She just wanted to hear my voice. She asked about Sophie. She asked about my job. She even said she was proud of me. It was not an apology. It was not an acknowledgement of everything that had happened. But it was something. A tiny crack in the wall that had stood between us for so long. I am still waiting to see if that crack will widen. Maybe it will. Maybe it will not. Either way, I have made peace with both possibilities. Now, sitting in my office on the 12th floor, I look at my phone as it buzzes again. Mom. I pick it up this time. "Hi, honey," she says. "Just wanted to check in. How are you doing?" I smile slightly. "I am good, Mom. Really good. We talk for a few minutes about nothing in particular." When we hang up, I feel something I have not felt in a long time when it comes to my family. Hope. Not the naive hope of a 17-year-old boy who believed promises without question, but the mature hope of a grown man who knows that people can change even if slowly, even if imperfectly. Looking back on everything, I have learned a few things that I carry with me every day. First, boundaries are not walls built to keep people out. They are fences that protect what matters most. You can love someone deeply and still say no to them. Those two things are not contradictions. Second, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean allowing the same harm to happen again. Forgiveness is releasing the anger that poisons your own heart. I no longer carry bitterness toward my parents or my brother. But I also do not pretend that what happened was acceptable. Third, your worth is not defined by how much you give up for others. It is defined by how you rise when nobody is there to lift you. That 17-year-old boy who had his future stolen, he did not give up. He worked harder. He built something real. And today he answers to nobody but himself. I used to think my family stole my future. Now I understand they just forced me to build a better one. If you are watching this and struggling with your own family situation, I want you to know that your story is not over. The people who should have supported you might have let you down. The circumstances might feel impossible, but you have more power than you realize. You can rewrite your own ending. Here is my question for you. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? How did it change your relationship? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these videos. And if you are new here, consider subscribing so you do not miss future stories about resilience, growth, and finding your own path. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Whatever challenges you are facing, I hope you find the strength to protect your peace while keeping your heart open. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.